Hey guys, what's going on? Last week we talked a little bit about writing music for content creators. Today I want to make a follow-up video talking about a little bit more of an in-depth view of writing some music. Alright guys, I think it's time to jump into actually writing a beat. So the first thing that I'm going to do in making this beat is to lay out a hi-hat pattern. Hi-hats are absolutely incredible for just setting the division or sort of setting the pace, right? There's a lot of different patterns you could use depending on the genre or the style, but even something like a consistent like 1, 2, or like a ta ta ta, that will be a great start. The next step that I would probably do myself is to do the kick pattern. So why would I want to do the kick next? Well, we're going to be establishing an accent pattern. And this is going to be also establishing sort of like the drive of our piece of music. Now, you could have the bass drum do accents within that first bar to set, momentum, or you could have it go over the course of the 2 bars, and then you would have a 2-bar phrase with the kick drum, and the hi-hat pattern would just be a consistent repeating pattern. After you've laid down your kick drum, I would lay down your snare. So you have your snare sort of on your off beats typically, or on the beats that are not being accented by your bass drum. If you were to have them be on the exact same beat for every single time, you would never hear both of them. You would probably only hear the kick. And honestly, that would get really muddy. You will find a lot of times that snare patterns kind of tend to fall in the same place. So a lot of what I like to do to variate snare patterns are to add what are called ornamentations. These are things like ghost notes, accents, flams, all of these different specialized techniques specifically for percussion, and for some other instruments as well, but that really help to add flavor and texture to your music. Once you've got your kick, your hi-hat, and your snare, that's already a pretty solid start to a really basic beat. What will really help to make your beat sound really, really good is to kind of double stack some of the samples as well. For example, a clap goes really good with a snare when you blend them together volume-wise. Additionally, sometimes people will take 2 kick drums and they'll sort of blend them together volume-wise to get the tone that they want. You could also do this with your hi-hat to create something called a round robin. Let's say that you have your hi-hat pattern playing the 8th notes, right? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So let's say you wanted to create a little bit of some interest in the timbre of your hi-hat. To make it sound like the drummer is hitting the hi-hat at different rates, what you would do is alter the sample to a slightly different sample, or depending on what you're using, like if you're using a drum plugin, you could easily alter the velocity to change how the sample is played by the sampler. If you are just using samples, like dragging and dropping samples, what I would do is to take like 3 different hi-hats, 2 close ones and 1 open one. Now, when you do your extra hi-hats, what I like to do too is pan 1 to the left and pan 1 to the right. Now, a lot of times I find that I end up doing this with triplets specifically. You know how in trap songs you get that that kind of thing. Those rolls typically are panned left, right, so that when you hear the digga da, so digga da, like left, right, center, and that really gives a nice effect, even if you only blend to a certain percentage to the left or to the right. So right away, these are a few things that could already make a drum beat sound interesting, even if you're doing something kind of basic. If you have access to some loops, what I would do is start off with a hi-hat loop and then build everything off of the loop that you've chosen. So once you have your beat, now it's time to start dropping in some melodic elements. Now, the easiest thing that you can probably do at this point is to either add a chord progression to set sort of the harmonic idea, or to add a bass line. Now, depending on what style you're choosing, I would say choose the chord progression first, because let's say you don't necessarily know how to like make chords, right? There's plenty of free resources for like drag and drop MIDI chords, right? So if you were to take that and sort of block out like 4 bars, each bar having their own chord, sort of establishing just some sort of harmonic progression. Basically, you'll be able to take that harmonic progression that you've established, and you can leave a layer, right, that's just whole notes if you wanted to. But then you could take that and copy it, shoot it up like an octave, and then chop the samples up so they fit a rhythmic pattern that will complement the drums that you have underneath of it. Once you've established a harmonic progression that you like, as well as a rhythmic pattern for the harmonic progression, you can write your bass line. Now, what I would do with your bass line is to make it a bridge between the rhythmic context of the drums and the melodic context of the chord progression. That might seem complicated, but a lot of times it's just gonna be mimicking the rhythmic elements as well as the harmonic elements. So once you have your bass line composed, the final cherry on our musical dessert is a melody. Now, I think a lot of people get really intimidated by writing melodies because they think they need to be super, super complicated. Well, they really don't. Now, I want you to take a second to think about all of the space in your music. Is there anywhere in your beat so far that has a little bit of open space? Now, what I like to do is to play during a duration that I had not played previously in my beat, or playing in unusual spots. Alright, so hopefully these tips for writing a simple beat will help you to come up with something for your own content. A lot of these things are pretty simple and pretty basic for anyone that has a fundamental music understanding to begin with, but this isn't really who that's for. You know, I think that these things can apply to people that have a more extensive musical background, but I think that if you utilize these philosophies and techniques, that you will find that it will enhance your own media, and it should be pretty simple to actually come up with some ideas. So I'll be making some more videos like this to go in depth on each individual thing, like melody, harmony, you know, rhythm, stuff like that. So stay tuned for that, and thanks for watching.